Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Checked In Podcast. Got Michael and Zac here. We're going to switch it up today. We're going to do a reaction video to something that Zac found on YouTube regarding our future as a country, our future as a world. Definitely something you're going to want to stick around for. Let's get started.
All of this seems great so far. Fertilizer has allowed many countries to grow and in some cases become superpowers of the world, where nearly all of their citizens are well fed and have a very little food insecurity. But in 2010, a few scientists began to notice something a little bit worrying. Fertilizer, the compound responsible for a ton of the growth that humanity has seen over the last 2 centuries, might actually be running out. That's because that our fertilizer that has been used to grow our entire civilization over the last couple hundred years needs 3 things. One of which is a nitrogen-based compound, the second of which is a phosphate, and the third of which is a potassium-based compound. And 2 of these are compounds that we cannot create from scratch. And those compounds are phosphate and potassium, or in its raw form, potash. You see, potash is a non-renewable resource that is largely controlled by just 4 countries. Canada is by far the world's largest producer of potash, with over 1/3 of the world's potash coming from Canada. Russia, Belarus, and China produce between 10 and 20% of the world's potash each, and every other nation in the world combined produces only about 19% of the world's potash. And let's think.
So, basically, 4 countries, from what I'm understanding, 4 countries basically dictate the world's crops and their ability to grow.
Yeah.
And I'm understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Which is why I think it's crazy, because it's just like, you know, the corruption, or like, I should say not, well, yeah, the corruption of like having that power in your hand to where you're like at the point where you're like, yeah, well, do what I say or you can't grow food.
Bro.
Yeah,
I mean, that's, and it's crazy too, because like for the longest time as the country, the United States, we've had a stronghold on the world because of, we were producing mad shit. We had more money than most countries. We were also in debt to a lot of countries, and our military. Yeah. But I mean, the only outcomes of this that I can see, aside from, famine, which we'll get into, is like either we have to do whatever they say in order to get fertilizer to just exist. We'll have to pay them out the ass to get these crops, which is going to make it so our shit's going to be mad expensive, or we end up going to war with a country for fertilizer.
And hopefully not ruining their fertilizer reserves in the process.
I mean, I could see us going to war with a country like with Morocco or Canada for the shit. I could see it.
I mean,
America? Come on.
I mean, I don't think it'd really be a war though. It'd be like we have like
we have the shit.
Like I've been watching a lot of videos recently of like other countries, Marine, soldiers, telling people that, hey, we work side by side with the American military. Don't fuck with them, type thing. You know what I mean? And these are just random soldiers that are just YouTubers or veterans, and they're just like doing, their own YouTube thing and whatever, and they're just like reacting to like working with our soldiers, and they're like, yo, don't fuck with them. Just them alone, no guns, nothing, will fuck you up. But like with guns and all that other stuff, they'll fuck you up too. So it's just like
100%, bro.
Yeah.
We put trillions of dollars into our fucking military. If we're not the most fucking feared military, I'd be pissed, bro. I'd be livid
too.
You're talking the most expensive military by like 100 times. We better be the most fucking
we're more in debt with our military than we are with any other country. Like
Swear to
America's
God,
like
bro.
what, like $40 trillion in debt and counting every second it
Bro,
goes up.
yeah,
And like
and
probably 30 trillion of that is to our own military.
exactly. And I saw a video online too, where this guy was talking about because he was a supplier to the military, and he said that the military does not like they don't like try and like find the best price for things. They don't nothing. It's just like whatever the price
Yeah.
is, we're paying it. So this dude, his company produced like
Hmm.
screws or bolts or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And for a pack of like 50, 100, 200, something like that, the military
Yeah.
paid over $5,000.
Damn.
Bro,
For
they're just
bolts.
like, oh, how much is it? 5,000? All right, you got it. And then they just got like 200
But
screws sent to him. I'm like, bro, what? So like,
yeah.
we have an expensive military. Don't get me wrong. We have the fighter jets, we have the guns, we have the tanks, we have all that shit. But at the same time, if we're spending money like this, that could play a heavy part into why it is such an expensive military.
Yeah, of course.
That's where those tax dollars go. Tax dollars. All right, let's keep going with this.
About that for a second. Essentially, 4 countries control one ingredient that will dictate who is or isn't allowed to produce fertilizer. And because potash resources are being depleted in these countries, potash will become a more valuable resource as the world's population continues to grow and the food requirements for the world also grow. Now, the world isn't likely going to go through a potash shortage in the next 100 years or so. In fact, our potash reserves could last for several hundred years before we see any shortages. However, phosphate, one of those 3 key ingredients, is a completely different case. You see, since 2010, there's been a hotly contested debate about when, not if, the world will run out of rock phosphate. The United States Geological Survey estimated that we currently have 260 years worth of phosphate left in the earth, assuming that the population doesn't grow at all. And assuming the population continues to grow at a similar rate at what it is today, we have roughly just over 100 years of phosphate left in the earth. However, those are just estimates. That number could be much lower or much higher. But really, we don't even need to know when the world will run out of phosphate, because we are already seeing shortages. And also, we are seeing countries take drastic economic policies to protect their own phosphate. For example, phosphate prices have increased by roughly 80% since early 2020. In September of 2021, China banned exporting of any of its own phosphate in hopes of assuring that it had enough phosphate to produce enough fertilizer to grow its own food for the foreseeable future. But there is one key aspect that I have left out until this point, and that is this. You see, China has the second largest phosphate reserves in the world, as it owns roughly 5% of the world's phosphate. And keep in mind, that is second on this list, and it is already concerned about its phosphate supply. Syria has the third largest amount of phosphate at 3%, Algeria is next at just under 3%, and the rest of the world has only 2% or less each per country in terms of the world's phosphate reserves. But then at number 1, there is the country of Morocco. You see, Morocco owns a whopping 70% of the world's phosphate. And let's think about that for a second. One nation owns 70% of a resource that can dictate which other nations will be able to feed their populations. In fact, within the next several decades, the world's food supply could become dependent upon whoever Morocco chooses to trade with or who they choose not to trade with. Or maybe just simply, Morocco will just sell off the phosphate to the highest bidder. There is also the potential for international conflict or cooperation, as that has been seen throughout history with any valuable resource. And this would be far from the first time that we have seen wars started or partnerships enacted that revolved around the acquisition of fertilizer. In fact, increasingly every single year, large populous countries like India, Mexico, and Brazil are becoming even more reliant upon Moroccan phosphate for their agricultural industries. And other nations like the United States have been placing tariffs on Moroccan phosphate and going in the other direction. Now, it is worth mentioning that peak phosphorus, as
Wait, pause
called
it,
in this predicament.
So we already have our hand in the pot, based on what he just said, that America is already doing tariffs, which is like taxing other countries to use it. So like we must have some control over Morocco.
No, the US putting a tariff on it means that doesn't that mean we're charging to have it imported?
Let me double check. Gonna ask Siri. Hold on. Oh yeah. So basically there's a higher tax. Okay, my bad. I read that wrong. So basically there's a higher tax on us importing it to the country. So they tax the people that buy it. There's a higher tax on people buying.
So companies within the US are being taxed to utilize this phosphorus in making fertilizer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
it's like an
my
import
question
tax.
for this would make, I mean, it doesn't make much sense. If we need phosphorus to make fertilizer, why is the US charging people more to use it? Like, what the fuck are you going to use other than it?
You're right. I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe it's to balance out that military debt. I don't know.
That makes no fucking
That
sense.
is weird though, because like why would they do it?
I mean, I would assume it would be to incentivize finding another route other than phosphorus. But if that's the route people are going, they're just paying more.
Yeah.
And then that also plays into the higher prices in fertilizer around the country now. Because I was watching a bunch of videos regarding fertilizer from like farmers and shit online.
Yeah.
And they're all talking about how the prices of fertilizer now are up like 200% from last year.
Yeah.
Which is,
and it's probably because
200%
everybody's been staying home, eating more, so the demand for food goes up. But the only other reason I could think of is if they're taxing it is probably because they're getting a small percentage to then go ahead and buy it in the future, to have it, in the future, to buy more of it for the country to use it. You know what I mean? So
you live in America, right? You think they're really doing that?
I mean,
You think
that's
they're
like the
really
only
planning
logical
ahead like
thing
that?
Maybe that's the only logical thing I could think of. Like,
They're using this.
why else would
they're
you?
using this tax money towards vaccination incentives, boy. But no, I mean, you even notice though. He even said like, historically, there have been countries that have gone to war over fertilizer, bro. Literally over this exact same thing. There have been wars for this shit. Like
over guano
I would
is
see
what they used to use was guano, which is bad shit. But yeah.
Oh, they'd be going to war over bat shit.
That's That's actually why America conquered a lot of these tropical areas too, and Midway Islands, some of the Caribbean islands. Is because the bats, there's a lot of bat shit on the island, and they were just hauling it off over. So I mean, you can, why not? If you have a bunch of mouths to feed, and big old Uncle Sam is like, hey, listen, we gotta feed 6 million people. Probably at the time, I don't know. This was probably like when they did all this. This was probably like around 30s and 40s. So, they're like, hey, we gotta feed whatever our population is, and so we're gonna go fight this country so that we can have access to its caves, so we can get the bad shit out of it. And I mean, I think anything look, we went to war over like opioids. You know what I mean? Like over opioids. But that's a whole other thing too. But I mean, that's weird to me that we went to war over opioids, because we messed up. I guess we fumbled that bag too, because what did we do when we got opioids? We just created the war on drugs in our own country.
I'm
Cool.
like, bro, I'm like, I don't want to say 99. I feel like 99 is pretty high, but I want to say I'm like 75% sure that that war that we fought for opioids was specifically to create a war on drugs so that the pharmaceutical company would be able to then supplement people with lab created opioids.
Yeah, synthetic. Yeah,
Yeah, because I
synthetic
mean,
or with a little bit of yeah, yeah. I get
when
what
they're
you're saying.
when you're addicted to heroin or whatever, and you go
Yeah.
through rehab, your rehab, the drug that you're given is literally an identical, like the feeling you get on this drug is identical to heroin. You're not getting like taken
Yeah,
off of
morphine.
heroin. You're just getting
Yeah.
given something, a tab that you put on your fucking tongue that makes you high. So it's like
Yeah.
you're replacing heroin with like lab created heroin. Like
Yeah.
it's the same fucking thing. It's just like regulated so you can continue buying it over the course of your life. You're not gonna, you can't OD. I mean, you could probably OD on it, but
Yeah.
if you take the prescription you get, you're not ODing. You're just getting high as shit and then falling off. So it's
Yeah.
like,
And I think too, I mean, that could have said, like, I don't think it was like, I don't know. It could be a coincidence or not, but where my mind just went was like, well, we can show the world that we'll fuck somebody up over opioid plans. Then, I mean, you don't want to play with our food supply. You know what I mean? And then we've already kind of
we
took
didn't though.
over a bunch of small countries to like, I mean, technically, we can say we lost. We can say we lost that
Yeah,
war in
the war we
Afghanistan.
fought on opioids was in Vietnam, and we got fucking molested, bro.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
like
for sure.
we might have got some, yeah, for sure. But like at the end of the day, we went in that war and we retreated. I
Right.
think really we just went in there to get what we had to get. And
Yeah.
then the US was just like, all right, we're just gonna keep pushing it until finally it's done. And I'm
On
pretty
some
sure on the
capture the
past
flag shit, like
yeah, exactly.
got the flag. Oh shit.
All right, we got it. We got it. Now just all you guys are collateral
Yeah,
damage.
yeah. Oh yeah.
May not occur as soon as we think. As mentioned earlier, estimates range from seeing significant shortages relatively soon to seeing shortages that occur in several hundred years from now. But this peak phosphorus mentality is actually quite similar to what people were saying about oil in the 1950s. Because back then, many scientists assumed that oil production and reserves would peak around the year 1970. Yet since then, the world has discovered substantially more oil in places like Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Norway, Iran, and China. There was also technological innovations for oil, like fracking, which allowed the extraction of oil in deposits that were previously seen as unextractable because of how difficult it was to, well, extract the oil. All this means is that even though it is predicted that rock phosphates will become significantly depleted over the next several decades, we can't really know for sure. Also, scientists have begun genetically engineering plants to absorb significantly more phosphorus in natural soil to try and avoid the reliance on fertilizer. And so far, those experiments have been minor successes. But at the end of the day, the entire world might be for its fertilizer, something that has never been seen before in the history of the world. All of those old superpowers that owned a large percentage of the world's resources, like the United States had with oil over 100 years ago, the British Empire had with metals in the early 19th century, the Dutch East India Company of the 1600s, or the Hudson's Bay Company in the late 1600s, all of those monopolies could pale in comparison to Morocco's monopoly on phosphate and the world's fertilizer. It is also worth noting that part of Morocco's phosphate reserves are currently in an occupation zone in the Western Sahara, meaning that a lot of those deposits are already in a conflict zone, which could be a sign of things to come. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you may also like my second.
So first of all, the fact that it could be either a few decades or a few hundred years. I would like to lean towards a few hundred years, just so it's not my problem. It's like my great grandkids' problem.
Right.
But that, I mean, what he said at the end right there, it's in a conflict zone already. That means that there's basically already a fight for it going on right now. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's already happening. That's already like
Right.
what we're predicting is already happening. But bro, 70%, Morocco has 70% of this element that everybody needs. Literally everybody fucking needs. And the only advancements they've made to kind of combat this is making plants, rice right now, that has the ability to absorb more phosphorus naturally through soil.
Yeah.
But it's like, is that going to happen? I wouldn't be surprised if we found a way to extract phosphorus from some bullshit, kind of like how they were mentioning the oil and the fracking.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened first, because
yeah.
then the US can tax that shit.
I mean, I think like, obviously all the people in charge of the world know this is an issue, but I think what they'll do is, I should have said, I think I know they're aware of it. So I know they're working on, obviously there's people working on shit. But my thing is, what if, like I said, what if a country's like hoarding in, is like, okay, you get some crumbs, you get some crumbs, you get some crumbs. And then like that's the shortage right there. What if, because that can accelerate those years because a country's hoarding it, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're just like, well, we're trying to reserve it and make sure that we can properly hand it out to every single distribute it to every single country that would that can use it the right way. But it's just like, if they're holding it down, that would make the food shortage come to our generation faster, because we're just like, you know what I mean, like we're just sitting ducks basically waiting for them to finally pull that card and be like, hey, well, hold on. I mean, like, we're slowing down on all this stuff. You guys got to figure something else out. Right. But we're, and then does that lead to population control? Or you think that's the reason why there's some population control methodology or, things going on right now?
Let's for a second, let's just play the domino effect game, right? Game I just made up.
Wow. Did you make the wheel?
I reinvented the fucking wheel just now.
Holy shit.
So phosphorus, one of the main ingredients in fertilizer, is becoming a scarce product, right? Now, if phosphorus is a scarce product and there is one country that owns 70% of the world's phosphorus, right? That means only a few things can happen with that. Either we're going to go to war, which it could happen, probably unlikely that we're going to go to war, because 70% means that the rest of the fucking world is also going to go to war. Or, there's no way the US like goes over there and starts like killing people over phosphorus and another country doesn't jump in and be like, nah, fuck you, we're getting it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the more realistic outcome from the phosphorus shortage and it being in Morocco and Morocco having 70% is that, like you said, it gets distributed less and it gets distributed at a higher cost. Now, if it gets distributed at a higher cost, only larger companies can afford the higher cost phosphorus for their fertilizer. If only larger companies can afford the larger cost product for their fertilizer, they then have a monopoly over the food game in the United States. If they have a monopoly, they can raise the prices. If they raise the prices, food shortage.
Right.
And that's where your population control comes in. Now, your head of lettuce went from being $4 to $14. And it's because, well, what are you going to do? You're going to get this big ass head of lettuce for 14, or you're going to get this little thing that looks like a Brussels sprout that is a head of lettuce, but it has no fertilizer in it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's the fertilizer is the main ingredient in mass producing crops. And if 70% is owned by one country, they literally can price it however they want. And then the smaller companies, like the local places that are farming for just their hometown, their city, they're going to be like shit out of luck. The only ones that'll be able to afford it are the large mass production farms.
Yeah. So, and then that also makes me think like, yo, is is immigration rates going to go up? Are people just going to start migrating to the countries that are like that can afford this new like scarcity trade or whatever?
Bro, that
And
actually
then are
that
there
hit me for a second. Yes.
yeah, and then are we gonna actually build a fucking wall around all the borders of the United States just like that? Nah, I mean like obviously not. But I'm speaking very like symbolically here, but like, are we just gonna basically stop foreigners from coming in and all that other shit? And then how is that gonna affect trading, other shit? Because like recently, like China and Australia have been going through some bullshit, and recently, there was some coal that because China's on this whole thing that they want to be self-sufficient, blah 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 blah. You kind of heard some of
Smart.
that in the video.
Smart.
Yeah, no, it's very smart, but it caused a whole blackout in China for like 2 or 3 months during 2020.
Really?
So yeah,
Why?
because their whole their whole country, like I think it's like 60 to 70% of their whole country, is still running off of like coal to power their power plants and all that other shit. So yeah, they're mad old school. So like basically they didn't accept they weren't accepting any like foreign imported goods from Australia. So like you had these huge ass like cruise ship size fucking freight boats, and they were just sitting on the outside of the Chinese border for months during this blackout and everything like that. And the Chinese people had to like suffer and all this other shit because they had like no electricity, so they had to just go like caveman. So yeah, it was like a lot of blackouts in certain areas. So that's why America, they gave TikTok to America. No, I'm kidding, because they didn't have
To get rid
electricity
of
to
this
use
shit.
TikTok.
Bro, isn't that what's happening right now with America though? I mean, there's a what's it called? Like a shipment delay in like everything. Isn't that
Well,
kind of
yeah.
what's happening now with
Well, that's
America?
because China. That really has to do with China because the blackouts occurred where most of the American companies or other companies have their factories at, and where the the lower wages to pay the Chinese workers than we would pay here at home. But yeah, that's exactly why there's been shortages and all this other shit because manufacturing has gone down in China because of this blackout. How are you gonna can't power a factory without electricity? You know what I mean? So like
Where's your coal now, bitch?
just think of like millions of fucking factories not producing shit, and then that's why this is because the pandemic nobody's going to work. No, they were working still in China. They were taking precautions just like we are now with masks and everybody's going back to work and all this other shit now. And like
Right.
I think that has a lot to do with it. And not only that, obviously there was like other shit where like chip shortages for certain softwares and like people were taking
Yeah, I seen that.
computer chips out of devices and like returning them back to stores just because they wanted the chip. And like yeah, it was mad weird shit going on. So like um yeah, I think like then it's gonna lead to also um with that being said, it's gonna lead to how are we gonna feed our livestock? We don't have enough fertilizer to get them their feed. You know what I mean? Because if the grass don't grow, the cows don't eat. The cows don't eat. We don't get milk. We don't get beef. We don't get a lot of other shit. We don't get our manure that we could also use. As part of a fertilizer for the soil too. Obviously, there's just not enough cows on Earth to like supply what we have now. I mean, that's why they stopped using bad shit because the population went up so high that they had to start using like these phosphorus and like nitrogen. Forgot the
Right.
other one, but yeah, you know what I mean. So it's just like there's no way that I can see this ending peacefully, and then also like the countries that do have the phosphorus, like they said, Canada, China, Morocco, and Australia have like the remaining 20% of the world's reserve or whatever. Or no, they have 10%. The rest of the world, like all the rest of the world, has 10%.
Yeah.
The other 10%. So it's just like there's no way that countries that have this shit are gonna be like, yeah, well, we'll use our like. Look at America. We're not even. We just started tapping into our own oil reserve just because gas prices are fucking like $5 a gallon everywhere. people, I remember seeing over the summer, people down south were literally like be at the gas station with the biggest jugs I've ever seen in my life, and like they were just filling all the gas up, and then they were like driving home, or they would come there with like milk jugs, fill up a gas with a gallon of milk, and like put all these gallons of milk in the back of the pickup truck, and then go home, and then come back with more recycled milk jugs. It's just like, bro, like what, like that made us tap into our. So what if we tap in our own reserve here, and then we run out, and then we got to go back, and we got to try and figure out a different way to do it. I mean, are we gonna start going back in the back caves, or we're gonna, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna start throwing our own shit in there. Human shit. I don't think human shit will work. But like, I mean, I've always seen like people in their home gardens. They make their own like compost from like their plants and stuff like that. That they fruit peels and other stuff
Eggshells,
like
coffee
that. But like,
grounds, stuff like that.
yeah, coffee grounds, like, yeah, all that shit. But it's just like, how the fuck are we gonna get more? We need plants to make plants grow. So you know what I mean. So it's just like, this is a big thing, and it doesn't have to happen soon, but it will, because people understand the scarcity, and whenever there's scarcity in something, like,
People
it's
jump.
bound to be, yeah,
Yeah.
it's bound to be corrupted, and people are gonna just start acting really radical about it.
I honestly I didn't even think of like, because when I was seeing all this shit, I was like,
Hmm.
okay, vegetables are going to be dying off, or vegetables are going to be like a scarce thing, whatever.
Yeah,
I didn't think like, bro, even livestock is
yeah,
technically using for like, in order to maintain your livestock, you need fertilizer. Like,
yeah.
so it's not like, oh, vegetables are going to go scarce. No, cows, chickens,
Hmm.
pigs, like all that shit. Like everything is
Yeah.
affected by this. So it's not like just your produce department. This is every department in the store. And then I saw
Yeah.
on a video that I was watching with a farmer, he goes, if you're not if you're living in the city and you're not already living out in the country, growing your own shit with your own livestock, good luck to you. And I mean, that's true,
Hmm.
because if you think about it, right? If you live in a city and you're not out in the sticks with like acres, the
Yeah.
most you can grow is like enough. You can grow enough vegetables to get you by for like a month, maybe
Yeah.
two, maybe.
Yeah.
But like
Hmm.
you don't
Before
have
that,
the
I mean, that
cow.
they probably spoil unless you freeze them or
That's
something.
what
You
I'm
know what I mean?
saying.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like my when I was living in like a suburban area, and my
Yeah.
neighbor had a garden, and
Hmm.
he'd be able to have vegetables all year round,
Hmm.
but it was only like six. So he'd make enough vegetables, and he had a big garden. He had enough
Yeah.
vegetables to go all year round, but like he had to grow for the winter primarily, and they still
Hmm.
had to at some points go buy produce at the store. But like
Yeah.
he didn't have cows, chickens, and all that shit. So like even if you were to get to the point where you like made a garden on your balcony, right, and in
Hmm.
your apartment in your big city, and you had a garden on your balcony, you're not getting
Yeah.
any chicken, any fish, any
Yeah.
beef, any of pork, not any of that. You're getting none of it.
Hmm.
So it's like, no matter what you do to try to combat this, you literally
Yeah.
can't win if you're living
Hmm.
in a big city, which the big cities are the most populated areas. So
Oh yeah.
we're fucked either way you put it.
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's bananas, and like, I just want to say one last thing about this. If you're near an A&M university, you might want to enroll. uh, but yeah, that's bananas. I want to say thank you guys for being checked in. Always continuing to subscribe, follow us, like our posts. If you're not subscribed, you don't follow us, don't like our posts, we highly, strongly encourage you to. We always coming at you guys with that fire. You know what I mean? And definitely turn on the post notifications. Those are going to be the best way to see when we post. And we want to hear back from you guys more in the comments. We want to know what you guys think about this food shortage situation. How soon, how late will it happen? All that other stuff. Maybe some insight from you guys that we haven't talked about in here. Just let us know. As always, you can follow us and subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube. It's just checked in. And then We got banned from TikTok for some reason. We
I was
don't know
just gonna
why.
say you're gonna hit it with the TikTok too.
We don't know why I was gonna say it, but yeah, our TikTok is under reconstruction right now. So you can follow us on Instagram at the Checked In Podcast. We just got our Twitter back up. That's at the Checked In Podcast. Spotify, um, Tidal, Twitch at the Checked In Podcast. We're all over. So if you're watching a video game on Twitch, look us up. You know what I mean? If you're listening to music on Spotify, look us up. If you're watching Jake Paul on YouTube, look us up. Yeah, we're here. And we want to say thank you always for being checked in.